India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar began his three-day visit to Singapore and China today. The External Affairs Minister, currently in Singapore, met his counterpart Vivian Balakrishnan, where he reaffirmed Singapore's key role in India's Act East policy. Jaishankar also held talks with Temasek Holdings' chairman-designate Teo Chee Hian, discussing India's economic transformation and investment prospects. Vivian Balakrishnan, Dr. S. Jaishankar's Singaporean counterpart, said that India will be a major pole in a fast-evolving multipolar world. Up next, the spotlight will be on the China leg of the tour, where Dr. S. Jaishankar's first visit in over 5 years comes amidst efforts to stabilize strained ties following the deadly 2020 Galwan clash. He is expected to meet his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Beijing, followed by his participation in the SCO Foreign Ministers' meeting in Tianjin. Sources say that key issues on the agenda could include border tensions, rare earth supplies, the Dalai Lama's succession, and India-Pakistan relations. This visit could also lay the groundwork for Prime Minister Modi's possible trip to China for the SCO Leaders Summit later this year. India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar's visit comes just weeks after Defence Minister Rajnath Singh visited Qingdao for the SCO Defence Ministers' meet. And it comes months after NSA Ajit Doval's trip to Beijing for border talks with Wang Yi, China's foreign minister. Tensions remain between the two neighbors, but high-level engagement is certainly back on track. And now we have Dr. Tilak Jha, China expert and Associate Professor, Bennett University, joining us on the broadcast for more. Dr. Tilak Jha, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Talk to us. It's an interesting, there's a very famous Chinese proverb which says, may you live in interesting times. And as far as India-China relations are concerned, we certainly are living in some interesting times.
Yes, indeed we are, because befriending a country which is consistently trying to limit you to your size is not an easy relationship to manage. China historically has followed the track of somehow trying to limit India. I mean, that has been the bedrock of sort of guiding philosophy of China, through which it has used our relationship, our friendship. And I think Jaishankar's visit, for that matter, comes in a very, very difficult times. For 5 years, there was no visit. There was Galwan incident. There has been disputes over all sorts of issues. As you also pointed out, I think China has been trying to sort of limit rare earth exports. And there are several issues between the two countries, including the fact that during the Operation Sindoor, there is clear evidence now coming from India's top military officials that China aided Pakistan. Now, this is simply like China is definitely trying to limit India's potential, India's influence in its own periphery, economically, militarily, diplomatically. And of course, we all know that China has consistently opposed India at the United Nations high table, India's membership in the United Security Council. And I think there are very few issues on which the two nations come together. But the fact is that the two nations are big enough, they cannot afford to make an enemy out of themselves. And that's how they're somehow trying to sort of work things out. And this visit is definitely a signal, a positive signal in that regard. We should hope that I think there is a positive thing that comes out of this relationship in terms of putting the hatchet behind and making the relationship work for a better future.
Right. Let's also put the focus on Dr. Jaishankar's visit to Singapore as well, where he held talks with everybody from Singapore's foreign minister to Temasek's chairman designate as well. You had Singapore's foreign minister saying that India will be a major pole in a fast-evolving world, and also India's external affairs minister talking about the fact that, Singapore will form the core of India's Act East policy.
Yeah, I think Singapore has played historically very, very important relationship between the two countries in terms of, and in Southeast Asia in particular, because Singapore punches much above its weight in terms of its size. If you see its diplomatic influence, they have consistently held a very important position, including in the talks that happened, for example, between Donald Trump and North Korea. It was the host. And I think we do know for that matter that Singapore consistently holds high-profile talks. And it has a very strong influence in the entire Southeast Asia, including in China for that matter. So I think this is like a messaging for sure. Also, the fact that India is trying to somehow give the message that we have an influence. Singapore is a very important country which is favoring us in a way. And I think this Singapore's statement comes again at a very, very critical time. I think Singapore has stood its test as friendship. And by the way, I think what we also need to understand that Southeast Asia is the seas across from South China Sea to the Indian Ocean is the region in which China has a lot of differences with many Southeast Asian countries. And in those differences as well, Southeast Asian nation in general and Singapore in particular will have a very, very important role to sort of strike out a rule-based order as India has consistently sort of defended. And I think we need to put this statement in that context where both countries are trying to work out a supply chain, diplomatic mechanism, a strategic ecosystem, which is not very, very dependent on China. I mean, we do know for sure that the United States remains a very important power. It continues to be a very significant net security provider in the Indian Ocean and in the other region as well. But at the same time, I think it is time for China and India, countries like India, to behave responsibly and take over at some stage, or at least aid to the making sure that the region remains a secure backyard for everybody. And this is also just necessary because the US is not able to manage, because there's simply the security threats, non-traditional security threats and traditional security threats are all rising. Also because countries such as China are not behaving very, very responsibly. And I think we need to see it in that context where countries in the Southeast Asia are seeing a very important role for India. And I think that is the context in which we need to see this visit and the statement that has come from Singapore for sure.
Right. Talking about China and the resumption of high-level talks with China on a regular basis, that is happening at a time when there's a burning issue that is threatening to destabilize those normalizing relations, and that is the issue of the succession of the Dalai Lama, where we've seen India conflicting statements coming in from India and China, and it's going to be a major bone of contention in the immediate future.
Yes, it is, but I don't think that there'll be much engagement on that front. I think we'll have to wait whether a joint statement is issued after the meeting that happens. India, for that matter, recently in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, India took a very, very strong stand on terrorism, and it refused to sort of come on the joint statement, which did not criticize the Pahalgam incident. So I think it will be important to see whether a joint statement comes after Jaishankar's visit, whether flight resumption for that matter happens, whether there is an agreement on rare earth, whether there is substantial movement. I think the only movement which has happened since post-Galwan incident, when India and China have tried to come together and make things better, is that the resumption of the yatra, and I think we need to wait for some more signals before we can give a clear judgment whether both countries have actually moved ahead and left the past behind. So I think the Dalai Lama incident is definitely something that China hasn't taken positively. They have issued statements. This is going to be possibly one issue, and I think so I think we'll have to wait whether actually joint statements comes. That is going to be very, very important. What are the wordings of the joint statement? Whether there is actually some movement from what has already, from the kind of disturbances that ups and downs that the relationship has been going through. We'll have to wait for that.